you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
Today's guest is Alison Jenkyn. So while Alison's previously done some show jumping and eventing, she's now a dressage specialist. She's riding, trainer and coaching. How are you today, Alison?
Very well, thanks, Glennis.
Good. Alison, if you've listened to any of our previous podcasts, you'll know that we normally ask people about an inspirational quote or a quote that they use when they're teaching. Have you got one for us today?
Oh, I have had a bit of a think about a favourite quote, and I have to say I don't mind a good quote. I like reading a lot of varied ones about life in general, I would have to say. But probably one that I always try to remind myself of is a good old Walt Disney one, which goes something along the lines of the way to get started is to quit talking and start doing. And I think he's had some great life quotes sort of brought back over time, and it's always a good one, nice and simple and just get into it sort of quote.
That's right, and quite relevant too, because a lot of people do like to talk about what they want to do, but just get going. There's another one that's similar, that's something like, don't tell me what you want to do, show me what you have done.
Absolutely, and I think although there's a good time and space for some talking and some planning at the end of it, and I think we all need to remember it sometimes. Sometimes we've actually just got to get in and have a crack or a try and see how it goes.
Yep, good. Now, Alison, what about your first memory with horses? What were your first memory? Did you start riding early? Yeah, just tell me a little bit about that.
Oh, look, I couldn't tell you sort of the exact moment I started riding, but I come from a very horsey family. Obviously, Mum and Dad, Peter and Diane, were horsies. And my sister and I grew up around horses in country New South Wales on a farm. I can't even remember not having horses, probably more to the point. There was just always horses around. So we had a really great childhood. We grew up on the land. We always had a variety of animals around, dogs, cats, chickens, horses. We had ponies from the time we were little girls, my sister and I, and we always had horses on the place. So I guess for me it's just one of those things that was always part of life. I honestly can't remember a time when there wasn't a horse around. So we rode and we did a lot of pony club and a lot of ag shows in those early years, and they were great fun. Country New South Wales had some fabulous ag shows in the days we were doing those, and they were great. You met a lot of people and travelled a lot, and so it was a great lifestyle for a kid.
Okay. Now, because your parents were so professional, I'm thinking about Di and, and just yourself, always riding and out there competing and everything. Did you always think that you were going to work with horses, become a professional coach, or was there a time that you did study something else? Just tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, look, I always knew in some element horses would always be a part of my life in some way, shape or form. I think that was always a given, and to be honest, I never imagined, even as a kid, that my life would never involve horses in some way, shape or form. I have managed to have a bit of a corporate career as well and combine it in with the horses, which has been fabulous. But I always made sure I got some qualifications with the horse coaching and riding and things like that along the way. And like I said, I think it's one of those things I always knew that the horses would be a big part. But I've been very lucky. I've been able to establish a nice corporate career as well, which has been wonderful and combines nicely with the horse industry too. So I'm very lucky in that regard.
Okay. Now, people let you see that, that would ask you for your advice within the horse industry, what sort of, for them to be able to have the stickability, because there's a certain amount of stickability that even if you work in another industry, it's very easy to just focus on another industry and forget about the horses. What sort of character traits do you find for those who want to go on and continue with horses and, get qualified and do things professionally with horses? What character traits do you think, or core skills?
There's a lot of them. I find a lot of the best characteristics a horse rider can have are often ones that are really great life skills as well. But I think stickability or resilience is the word they quote a lot these days, to hang in there. I think to have a lifelong career with horses, you need to really enjoy your time with them as well. And it's not always about going out there and competing and winning or trying to beat the next door neighbour or your best friend. You've got to enjoy the journey along as well. You need to enjoy the ride. You need to enjoy just spending time with them. You know, you need to be able to sit back at home and just watch them clowning around in the paddock and think that's, you know, how nice it is to have that in your life. So I think all the competition and the travel and the meeting all the people, it's really cream of the crop. An absolute bonus. But I think you need to enjoy just having them in your life as well, and just sort of the enjoyment that brings you. I know a lot of people that work full-time in totally different industries and then ride part-time or compete part-time, and a lot of those people really enjoy the difference a horse brings into their life by having something away from the office. I know, for example, it's an outdoors life and it's really nice and attractive for people in that regard. And then there's a lot of people that do it full-time and chase it along as a career. And for those people, same thing, you really need to enjoy the journey with each of your horses, because if you're working in the industry full-time, they're long days and hard work. You need to really enjoy that and love the job that you do if you're going to do it as a full-time career. You know, and I think everyone who's worked in the industry full-time really gets to that stage where they just love it beyond everything and just enjoy every moment of it, even when things seem like they're a bit tough. And that's when the stickability or the resilience comes in. Absolutely.
Okay. Now, you've been in the industry, your parents are in the industry. Apart from your parents, who else has been someone or people that have influenced you along your way?
Look, I've been very lucky. I've seen an awful lot of good competitors from a lot of different countries, in a lot of different countries around the world as well. And anyone who knows me well will know this, I love watching people in the warm-up arenas at different competitions and venues, and I love to go and watch a great horse and rider combination. I'm a huge fan of combinations, you know, rider and horse together. And sometimes you'll see a horse compete with a really good rider and you think, oh, I wonder how they warm up. I love watching the warm-up because you can often get a bit of a guide or a bit of a training tip that you think might work on a horse you've got or a pupil's horse. And I think there's a lot of information to be gained there. So I wouldn't pin any one rider as an influence, but I think the more you can expose yourself to riders that are good, and sometimes you might just see a nice combination at a local competition, and so isn't that nice? And go and really enjoy watching them. And just, I'm quite a practical learner, I guess. I learn more out of watching and doing rather than reading. And I know there's quite a few people in that bracket, but I think the warm-up's often a little underrated, and just watching different people go in different sports too. I think sometimes as dressage riders, for instance, we get very focused on just looking at other dressage riders, whereas sometimes you could go to an event or a show jumping show and see some of the show jumping riders warming up a particularly fractious young one, and you think, oh, maybe that'd work on my warm young dressage horse too, so in the warm-up. So I think people need to just sort of keep their eye out and keep themselves exposed to a range of options and try and develop a sense of, oh, that could be something I could try myself. So I'm a real fan of that, and I've been very lucky because I've seen a lot through the different equestrian sports and a lot of different riders, and I'm a huge fan of doing that, watching the warm-up and just seeing what other people do.
Yep. And I understand because, you know, horses are horses. They can do dressage, they can event, they can do jumping, and riders can be versatile as well. So taking something from one part over to the other is, it's good.
Well, look, absolutely. And I think some of our best dressage riders have had a grounding in another sport, you know, hacking or show jumping or eventing. You find that quite often with some of our best riders, and vice versa for show jumping and eventing as well. And, I certainly think it was great. I evented and show jumped into my early 20s, and I always thought it was a great grounding as such. And then by the time I decided I wanted to sort of focus more on dressage, I think I was also more patient about it too, you know, which is something I probably wouldn't have credited myself with when I was younger. So, yeah.
Good. Now, you've talked about the combinations and, you know, you're not specifically saying one rider. Is that the same with horses? Is there one horse that's influenced you, maybe a horse that you've owned or a horse that's influenced you?
Oh, look, I've been blessed to have a lot of great horses in my life. And, every time you see one go out and compete or you ride one that's competed well, I guess, it's always hard to knock off the favourite ones of when you were a kid. So both my sister and I were very lucky to have a pony called Frosty, who was one of our first ponies. And it's always hard to beat the all-rounder that used to just knock up winning ribbons for you when you were tiny little kids. So I guess he'd have to be one of my all-time favourites, in that he hacked and jumped and evented and did dressage, and he must have taught 6 kids to get out there and compete in those days, and he was just an absolute champion. But I have been particularly lucky to have some wonderful horses around, not only my own, but obviously to watch Mum and Dad. They've had some wonderful horses that I've known and helped out with, and not necessarily competed. I'm one of these, I guess, a true horse fan, that if we've bred one and it's gone on and gone well, I think that's really good. And certainly watching Mum and Dad with some of their good horses over the years, you can't help be proud of horses that you've started off or bred and that have gone on to be really good horses. And even if they're not the world's greatest competitors, if they've just gone out and done a nice job and done their best job, you can't help but be very pleased with them, particularly if you've had horses that, you mightn't think were so gifted at something, and then they got it and went out and did a really good job of it for you. So, yeah, I think the attraction in the sport for me is, as I said, enjoying it and the horses going as well as they can, and you think you've done as well as you can too, and always trying to improve along the way.
Is there one proud moment, or is it just continual on the way? Or is there one moment that stands out above all the others as being proud, or is it just, different moments that you've had along the way that make you proud?
Oh, look, we've had some wonderful moments over the years. I think I always remember watching Mum be the Snow River Blackwood being the warm-up horse at the Sydney Olympics. That was a really big ticket thing when he was such a young horse then, and he just missed out on the Australian team. That was wonderful. And I always remember, Adley Richard, who we had going with Matthew Dowsley early in the year. He was certainly a wonderful horse as well. And it was always great to see the big CDI events go off and it, horses we'd started off go well there too. So they were great. One of my probably own horses that I was always very proud of was actually an old show jumper who I rode a lot when I was a teenager, and I turned him into a hack as well, and I won miles and miles of girl rider classes on him, and he really wasn't a hack, but anyway, he turned into this wonderful riding class horse, and it was an old horse called Shin, and I always remember him very fondly, just because he, to me, it was really amusing that there was no way he was a hack, but he was a wonderful riding class horse. Because he'd been around and done a heap. And I remember always being very proud of him because he was, turned into this beautiful hack, despite the fact he didn't really think he was one. So, yes.
Okay. Now, while you're out there, riding, showing, hacking, competing, doing dressage, think about a training tip for horses, for riders, something that you might see often, talk about what the problem is, and then how to fix it. What sort of tip that you would give the rider that's with that horse at that moment?
I think one of the great things about horse riding is that you not only get to assess the horse and try and keep a good understanding, you need to assess yourself. And if you've got something that's really just genuinely not working, and you find that at home or you find that out, then sometimes you just need to stop and have a think about it and say, this is not working. What can I do? You often see people getting frustrated, even with the handling side of things at competitions and that, because they can't quite manage something. And I think sometimes people need to just draw a breath before they get sort of upset or deterred or even a bit slightly anxious or angry about it, and just draw a breath and have a think about it. And in some cases, you might come back and think to yourself, I actually have absolutely no idea what to do about this. And I think then you need to decide, well, is this something I need to go and get some help with? Is there something I could read up about and learn? And you need to have a bit of a think about it. And sometimes you might find that you need to do a combination of all of those things. I find these days a lot of people haven't necessarily grown up with horses and they might only have one horse, and they may not get the same amount of handling or riding in, and sometimes their basics aren't there. And I think a lot of us that have grown up with horses can find that a little hard to understand, because we've handled so many and we've worked in the industry full time that we take things a little automatically, and it's a little bit quicker for people that are in the industry all the time or grew up with them. And I think sometimes people miss some grounding or some miles in their experience riding and handling in that regard. So I think everyone needs to just sort of sometimes take a breath and say, you know, is this something I can fix? Have I fixed this before? Is this going to be an ongoing issue for me? And then have a long, hard think about whether they think it's something they can handle themselves without getting into any great danger, or whether they need to sort of start thinking about seeking a bit of help. And particularly, I know with the warm bloods, which are, you know, the favourite dressage horse these days, they're a very smart horse, and I think sometimes people would find them a little easier if they sought a bit of help or advice earlier on, rather than leaving it till it was a big problem. The warm bloods are fabulous at their sport, but sometimes they're a little misunderstood. And I think with them in particular, they're so talented, but getting them on the right track earlier is always wonderful.
Sure. Oh, hang on a sec. Let me interrupt to let people know about the horse industry qualifications at onlinehorsecollege.com. If you have a look at the flexible options, there's online theory with practical components that can be completed by video or with a qualified expert in your area. That website again is onlinehorsecollege.com. Thanks. Okay, now you talked about one of the many options you gave is reading up and learning. Is there a book that you would recommend for our listeners that they could read and learn? Because I know you said you're a practical person yourself, but, you know, there must be something. Yeah.
Look, any of the great masters in your chosen sport. I have a bit of a look through Facebook. It's a great social media, and I think you can be bombarded by social media these days. But I love it for the fact that you can have a look at, for instance, you know, that over the last decade or so, England and their dressage team have just been, you know, absolutely dominating Europe and winning a lot of stuff, and how lovely it's been to see their background and what they do with their horses. And I certainly went along and sat in on the masterclass when Charlotte was out here at Caboolture, and it's wonderful to hear about what they're doing at home, how they hack the horses out. So I think if you see a rider that you like the look of, or a trainer that you like the look of, I would grab their book absolutely. And I think everyone's got a slightly different style that they think would suit them. So I certainly like the British horse. I'm a huge fan of Isabella Worth from Germany. I saw her ride when she was out here for some classes many, many years ago, and I was always particularly impressed with her that she could get onto a young horse that was, you know, trying to stand vertical. I thought that was just the best thing ever. And so I would read stuff that she wrote, for instance.
Okay.
So I think if you've seen someone you particularly, and everyone will have a slightly different person. I know a lot of people love George Morris in the show jumping world because of his absolute wisdom across many different sports and training. So he would be another one I'd recommend for all-rounders, for instance.
All right then. Alison, what are you looking forward to? What have you got in your horses that are coming along, students that are coming along, breeding horses?
A bit of all of that. So I've got some great young horses coming along myself. We've got some wonderful young horses coming through the ranks now. We've got some lovely brood mares that we actually bred. And so both mum and dad are breeding quite a few these days, and they're all just starting to come through to a rideable age and sort of get to the stage of being out to compete over the next 12 months, which will be great. And they're warm blood horses. I've got two young ones myself who will be looking forward to getting out and about with next year. So, yeah, I think I really enjoy the young horses. They're certainly not everyone's cup of tea, but I really enjoy them, and I like the challenge of sort of getting them going and right from scratch and then getting out to compete. And I enjoy riding them out still, and I take them out. I'm quite happy to still go out hacking and trail riding and that sort of stuff and go out with them, whereas I don't jump or cross-country anymore, but I still do like riding them out, which is good. And I think that's a really good thing with the young horses. So, yeah, look, that for me will be, I'm sort of looking forward to next year in that regard.
Okay, good. You've said quite a lot. You know, your philosophies come through a lot, starting right from sort of stop talking, get started, and talking about your horse Frosty, and then going on. You know, it's making sure that the basics are there and telling people to just stop and think about what they're doing, asking for extra help. Can you sum up your whole philosophy into a lesson today for our listeners, just so they can take something away with them?
If I was going to sum it up in a lesson, I think, as I probably said earlier, I'm a huge fan of a combination, horse and rider. So I think both parties have got to bring something to the combination, but the rider is the one who deemed it was the combination, so they got to do the choice. The horse was the one who just came along and got volunteered into the role, so to speak. So I think as riders we need to be very wary of that. So the horse didn't sort of come and pick us out of the pack, we pick them. So and I think we need to guard that. And I think that in this day and age, we need to be very conscious of trying to build that combination. So yes, we do need to train them and all of that, but we need to be in charge of our emotions and our feelings and try and make sure that whilst we're training and improving ourselves, we're also trying to improve and train and do the best for the horse as well. And then I think both parties get an enjoyable experience about it and enjoy the trip too. You know, I see a lot of people very focused on just the outcome at the competition. You've got to enjoy the journey as well, because you spend more time at home training than you do out at the comps. So if your ambition is to be a competition rider, you need to enjoy your rides and your days. And as I said, just watching them clown around in the paddock some days, you need to enjoy them. Enjoy the little stuff and the big stuff. Okay,
good. Now, Alison, how can people contact you?
My mobile and email are listed, but also through Facebook. As I said, I think the horse world's very good at using Facebook, and it's a good source of information and advice. And but yeah, they can certainly find me on my Facebook page as well.
And that's just Alison Jenkyn.
That's Alison Jenkyn, absolutely.
Yep. All right, and also you'll be on our Horse Chats page, which will be horsechats.com/Alison Jenkyn. So if people want to confirm those details, we'll have them there. Yeah. All right.
Right.
Thanks very much for your time today, Alison. Been great talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the call.
Yeah, hopefully everyone else has enjoyed it as much as I have. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Glenys.
Oh, wait, before you go, if you're an equestrian coach or a riding instructor, or even if you aspire to be one, have a look now at the free video series for horse riding instructors. It's on horsechats.com.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.